Hello, this is the Brian of London moment, brought to you by the Glazov Gang. I'm Brian of London, now permanently relocated to the shores of the Mediterranean and bringing you these thoughts from my bomb shelter in the sky in Tel Aviv, Israel. I really should have used this talk to talk about my trip to Hebron this week, but this alternate American subject is just burning within me. Do you remember where this comes from? In order to protect Americans, the United States must ensure that those admitted to this country do not bear hostile attitudes towards it and its founding principles. The United States cannot and should not admit those who do not support the Constitution or those who would place violent ideologies over American law. In addition, the United States should not admit those who engage in acts of bigotry or hatred, including honor killings, other forms of violence against women, or the persecution of those who practice religions different from their own, or those who would oppress Americans of any race, gender, or sexual orientation. That is what I consider to be the most important section of the Trump administration's January executive order designed to protect Americans. There was no mention of Islam or Muslims or even religion, just hostile ideologies which do not share our common Western notions of freedom and tolerance. When questioned by Ted Cruz in the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime and Terrorism about her actions to block Trump's executive order, Acting Attorney General Sally Yates said this.
And in this particular instance, particularly where we were talking about a fundamental issue of religious freedom, not the interpretation of some arcane statute, but religious freedom, it was appropriate for us to look at the intent behind the president's actions, and the intent is laid out in his statements.
Final, very brief question.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there is a protection in the US Constitution to practice a religion which fundamentally conflicts with other people's rights, like the right not to be blown up or shot in the street, why is Yates so determined to apply the Constitution to foreigners? I'm not a US citizen. The US Constitution doesn't apply to me outside of the US. Sally Yates is adamant the executive order she didn't like politically only seeks to ban Muslims from entering America. She thinks this will infringe on the religious freedom of foreign aliens. She was about to expand on this point at the end when Cruz cut her off. She wanted to talk about the intent behind the legislation, which she had inferred from listening to Donald Trump's stump speeches, or, more likely than not, the Clinton News Network's hysterical reporting on Trump's stump speeches. Yates was trying to say that because Trump spoke honestly about the problem with Islam, seeming to show a lot of hate toward non-Muslims, he should be forever banned from protecting the American people from ideological terrorists bent on bringing their mayhem to America. So back to the original executive order. Instead of looking at the document which said this, the United States cannot and should not admit those who do not support the Constitution or those who would place violent ideologies over American law, Sally Yates' refusal to support the administration she was part of rested on things Trump had said while running for election. But here's the rub. Everything stated in Trump's original executive order was directed at political actions, a political ideology, a violent, extreme, and nakedly hostile political ideology that drives its followers to call for the overthrow of the US Constitution and its replacement with an alternative system, Islamic Sharia. That these dreadful political goals and actions arise from the texts of Islam is the heart of the problem we face in dealing with Islam in the West today. I have been ordered to fight all men until they say there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. That is not a religious pronouncement. That is a political goal, forcing your ideology on others, hiding behind a facade of what we call religion in the West. And people like Sally Yates, when they buy this deception, and afford these political goals of Islam the same protections we have developed for private observance of religion, when people like Sally Yates do this, they tear down all our defences. For those of us who watched Trump very carefully on Islam, and his refusal to use newly invented terms like Islamism, we know what he's trying to do. We also know the gigantic task he faces to turn around the last 16 years of confused and incorrect thinking. Remember when the leader of the free world said this?
The face of terror is not the true faith of Islam. That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace.
That's a long way from the man who says this.
So we have a big problem with terror. And you saw they asked me the question about Islam the other day. And I said, I'll stick with my answer, because there's something going on, boy. There's a lot of hatred, whether you like it or not. And it's not politically correct, maybe. And certainly radical Islam and radical Islamic terrorism.
And a man who fires Sally Yates when she tries to bring her misunderstanding of Islam to the office. Thanks for listening. I'm Brian of London. Follow me, Brian of London, on Twitter and all over. And thanks for listening. And please support the Glazov Gang at jamieglazov.com and make sure you are subscribed to this Glazov Gang YouTube channel.